My gosh, does that girl know how to kick some butt in a corset? Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel Blue Lady Couture. As you can see, today is going to be a steampunk day and I'm going to do a kind of rundown of my 10 personal favourite films that have specifically influenced my designs and my own personal steampunk image. So weirdly, just before I started filming this, I was obviously flicking through Facebook as you do, and on my Facebook memories up pops a picture which was actually from my very first outing to a steampunk event meetup 11 years ago today. And I shall pop a picture in here somewhere of what I was wearing on that day, that first outing. And I was actually wearing this little hat. It is one of my first ever steampunk purchases to help finish off kind of my outfits and kind of give a real steampunk look to the kind of outfits that I threw together in the early days of my exploration into steampunk. I think you can see in the picture that I'm wearing a kind of a generic militaria inspired sort of jacket, not made by me. It was one that I bought in the shops, but I think I am wearing a kind of a little corset belt underneath, but you can't really see it in the picture. It's a bit of a dark picture, but this hat is still going strong after 11 years, so I thought it was rather apt that I wear this today to do this video for you. So if you are familiar with steampunk, you will know that there are many different aspects that you can use and take inspiration from to create your outfits. And in the interest of keeping this video as relatively short as I can, I'm going to try and restrict it specifically to 19th century into Edwardian, early 20th century kind of era. And I'm going to say that loosely based in those eras, because at the end of the day, steampunk is fantasy, but for me, at the heart of steampunk, it is Victorian science fiction. So 19th into early 20th century is where I'm going to try and keep my focus, with a little bit of leeway on a couple of the films that I'm going to include that are slightly more fantasy. My prerequisites are 19th into early 20th century, some kind of gizmo gadgetry that is kind of has a Victorian look to it, but you wouldn't really see actually in the Victorian era. Or I'm going to focus on elements that are slightly supernatural, a little bit gothic horror, those kind of things that all kind of work together to create that steampunk look. One of the other prerequisites of my list that I have compiled is that it has to have really good costumes, because at the end of the day, I am a costumier and this is a costuming channel. So I wanted to be able to show you the costumes in films that have really inspired me. Of course, the other thing is I could just stand here and list every Victorian costume drama in existence and say, yeah, this could be steampunk, but we'd be here all day. And as I want to try and focus on some things in the costumes that just make them a little bit different, a little bit quirky, a little bit steampunk. So the 10 films that I am going to mention aren't in any particular order. They're not ranked from number 1 to number 10 or 10 to 1, anything like that. These are just 10 films that I love and that inspire me. So let's get started, shall we? Okay, the first film I'm going to talk about is a bit of a classic, and it is a bit of a cliche, and it's also a bit of a marmite film in the steampunk world. You kind of either love it or you really hate it, and that is going to be Wild Wild West, which stars Will Smith, Kevin Kline and Salma Hayek. And for me personally, I think this is just a good fun all-round steampunk movie that just perfectly sums up steampunk, particularly Americana steampunk. Obviously focused in the American Wild West as opposed to Victorian London, but obviously it's the same kind of dateline, it's 1880s. And this film is just absolutely chock full from start to finish of gizmos, gadgets, amazing costumes, just great fun, loads of jokes, and it's a bit of a cliche, and if I get some people don't like it, and I can understand that, but for me it's just a good fun film. for many people, it's just a really great starting point if you are starting your journey into steampunk and exploring kind of different outfits, different looks, because it has got all sorts from obviously slightly more Western based, but that kind of Victorian gentleman look, of suits and waistcoats and frock coats, cravats, pocket watches, all those kind of things that make a really good basis for a steampunk costume, or steampunk outfit, I should say. And then you've got the ladies in the bustle dresses and their gorgeous hats. I mean, the outfit Salma Hayek wears in the finale scene is beautiful bustle dresses, beautiful hat detailing on it. It's just lovely. I love it. But then earlier on in the film, she has some pretty saucy but also pretty amazing outfits too. There's great corsetry. You've also got the evil mastermind genius trying to take over the world, with his kind of pseudo-military gang. But the actual aesthetics of that whole look that they chose, with the spider design, which they follow through in all of the costuming elements, and the designs of the sets in the background, it's just really, really nicely done. So obviously you've got a pseudo-military look, so you've got some really nice military-inspired jackets with gorgeous frogging and embroidery details on them that feature the spider emblem, which is obviously the symbol, the logo of the evil organisation that's trying to take over the world. And then follow through that follows through to his henchwomen, which I know, yeah, the personal guard of henchwomen in these, but they have these amazing outfits, these beautifully tailored jackets. I mean, they're a little bit saucy, they're probably a little bit impractical really for being henchwomen, but hey, this is fantasy, but they're just so gorgeously made, from the little the spiderweb details on their collar. They've got fun little bustle details. They've got some really rather lovely boots that they wear as well, and yeah, it's just that whole look. So I mean, there is something for everybody, I feel, in Wild Wild West. The second film I want to talk about is actually quite a very recent film, in fact. It only came out the back end of last year, and it is the Netflix film Jingle Jangle. Yeah, it is a Christmas film, so it's a real feel-good bonanza of colour and style, and there's a lot of singing as well, I have to say. If you're not a fan of singing kind of musical films, this might not be for you, but the costumes in it are absolutely beautiful. They're some of the best costumes in a movie that I have seen for a long, long time. And I think what I like most about them, and I talked about these a bit in my end of year review as one of my top films that I'd seen last year, but it was the level of detail that went into these costumes. Little things like the pattern matching and the choice of colours. The colours were just incredible. And that's one of the things about steampunk. Steampunk is not just about brown, or it's not goths who have discovered brown, as the one of the sayings go. No, if you go to any steampunk event, yes, there'll be a good deal of brown and leather and all the rest of it, but we love colour. We absolutely adore colour, and so did the Victorians. They weren't shy of using colour. They were the first to invent, chemical colours. And okay, yes, they were pretty nasty and they rotted the fabrics, and they probably didn't do a lot of good as well if you were wearing them. But they absolutely loved colour and they weren't afraid to use it. And that goes for the costumes in Jingle Jangle. Absolutely stunning use of colours, all a little bit clashy, but it worked. They also did a great job of mixing and matching different styles throughout the 19th century as well. So there was a good smattering of kind of early kind of 1860s crinoline styles, then you had bustle styles, and then you had kind of even more kind of late Victorian into Edwardian styles, particularly with the post lady in her I loved her outfit with her her really wide leg culottes. So at first glance you thought, oh, she's just wearing a nice Edwardiana kind of ensemble, but then you realise she's actually wearing, you know, a split skirt. She's wearing culottes, and she just had this gorgeous, you know, waistcoat kind of and jackets going on, and it's just, oh, so lovely. The third film that I'm going to talk about is The Secrets of Moonacre, and I love this film. It is adorable, and it's just so pretty, and it's fantasy kind of Victorian as opposed to a general Victorian or sort of steampunk Victorian. It is more fantasy based, but they went for a very strong Victorian look with the costumes, but they gave them a twist. And the twist was that they had these beautiful bustle dresses that from the front you think, you know, they're not 100% accurate, but they looked like Victorian bustle dresses, until you turn like side on or saw them from the back and you realise that they'd actually designed them to utilise the lobster tail underskirts, which would never have been seen openly in a traditional Victorian costume, but the costume designer for Secrets of Moonacre made a feature of these, and they're just stunning. These kind of skeletal kind of bustle dresses. I absolutely adored these, and I adore these so much that I have made several of my own variations of these for myself and for clients, and I will share some pictures of those now. So I've made several ball gowns. I've made a purple ball gown. I've also made my Victorian fairy tale Snow Queen gown, also uses this style of skirt as well. And then I have also made I actually made a replica of one of the costumes for a cosplay for a client. I've not got brilliant photos of this, I do have to say. It's one of the earlier cosplay commissions that I did. Yeah, I haven't got decent photos from it, unfortunately. But yeah, I just absolutely adore these designs, and that's what steampunk is. You know, it's taking that Victorian aesthetic and giving it those little twists. You know, you don't have to be 100% accurate, and that is the fun of steampunk, that you can do what you want, you know. The fourth film on my list is The Extraordinary Adventures of Adele Blanc. This is a French film, and it is subtitled, so you do have to kind of concentrate when you're watching it, but that in no way detracts from what an awesome film this is, and how wonderfully steampunk it is as well. I mean, just look at the advertising poster. She's riding a pterodactyl. I mean, I can't even. You know, if you want steampunk adventurer and explorer, this is the film for you. She has some amazing outfits in this. It is kind of more into the Edwardian era, from sort of turn of the century through to about kind of 1912. This has a wonderful mix of high kind of Edwardian into 1910 style gowns and dresses. It's set in Paris. You know, you can't get more the epitome of, you know, fashion at that time period. You know, was you went to Paris for your fashions. That's what you did. So it's, you know, absolutely beautiful, gorgeous lace blouses, lovely skirt details, and then there's the sections where she's doing her explorer adventurer kind of side of things in Egypt, where she's wearing her solar topes with all the veiling around it, which is just so pretty, with more practical kind of styles. So she's still wearing those beautiful Edwardian blouses, but she's wearing, you know, a practical waistcoat with pockets on it, and, you know, I think she wears a split skirt kind of culottes. I can't quite remember 100%, but, or if not, it's certainly a shorter style skirt, which, you know, it just lends itself to the practicalities of exploring pyramids in Egypt. It is a comedy film, so it does have quite a few cliche kind of characters in it, but again, you can use those for a little bit of inspiration if that lends itself to your steampunk character or your steampunk look. Film number 5. We're halfway through, guys, And film number 5 is going to be Van Helsing, starring the rather lovely Hugh Jackman and the equally lovely Kate Beckinsale. So this film is slightly more kind of gothic Victorian. Obviously it's based around Dracula, and it does have some steampunk kind of gizmos and gadgets in it. I've chosen this more for its gothic Victoriana aesthetic, which equally lends itself very well to the steampunk side of things. It is, I believe, loosely based in the 1880s. Obviously, Hugh Jackman essentially plays a kind of vigilante character, so he has this rather wonderful duster coat with the big shoulder kind of cape sections on it, which, you know, when you're out hunting vampires and you know, you need something that's going to protect you from the elements out in, you know, Eastern Europe or wherever you happen to be. I also absolutely adored Kate Beckinsale's costumes in this film as well. Yeah, now I can't remember exactly whether this is just before or just after she became Celine in the Underworld series, but my gosh, does that girl know how to kick some butt in a corset? And in this film in particular, she wears a really wonderful underbust style of corsetry with fitted trousers rather than a skirt. So that is another really strong kind of steampunk look that you can utilize. If you're not a big fan of wearing big skirts and, you know, big bustles, you don't have to. You can stick a corset on with a pair of leggings or, you know, some fitted trousers, a nice little bolero jacket, and you're away. There is also, of course, the wonderful scene where she goes to Venice. I think it's Venice, was it Paris? It's been a long time since I've watched this film. If nothing else, this is going to be, you know, a great list for me to go back and watch some films on a rainy day. The Vampire Masquerade Ball, where she wears a beautiful 1880s bustle ball gown in the most glorious scarlet red, which is a complete contrast to her more adventure-y kind of steampunk look throughout the rest of the film. Film number 6 is Stardust, and this starts off set in the 1880s, and then it moves kind of across to an alternate fantasy kind of universe. So it loses a little bit of its Victoriana aesthetic, but it still has some very strong steampunk vibes, namely the motley crew of airship pirates who we meet along the way, and they are led by none other than Robert De Niro. And can I just say kudos to Robert De Niro for that scene in a corset and petticoat doing the can-can. That's just, oh, it's just one of those classic scenes that will stay with me forever. And I know kind of the next scene in that film, his crew do use a term which is probably not really very correct to describe him, but at the end of the day they do accept him, you know, for who he is. But if you're looking for a kind of airship pirate inspiration for your steampunk outfits, you can't go wrong with checking out Stardust. You've also got kind of the more gentleman explorer adventurer kind of look as well. The outfit Tristan wears, which is that rather lovely, okay, white is probably not the most appropriate colour to do adventuring in, but you know, he wears it very well, and it's a very nice frock coat. And then of course you've got Claire Danes wears a really beautiful blue bustle gown throughout most of the film. And then you've got the really lovely witchy aesthetic provided by Michelle Pfeiffer. And again, although her outfits aren't really kind of Victorian, they have some wonderful full skirts and kind of fitted bodices, underbust detailing, which could very easily be transferred into kind of corsetry styles. So yeah, so I think there's some really good inspiration that you can take from Stardust. Film number 7 on my list is Crimson Peak. Now I know this film has been around for a little while now, but I actually only saw this for the first time at last Halloween. I'm not a big fan of horror movies, and it was one of those ones where I just wasn't sure whether it would be too horror for my tastes, but I did watch it after kind of checking everything out with my friends, and they say, oh, I'm sure you'll be fine, I'm sure you'll be fine, well, you can watch it slowly, we can stop it if you need to, because I just wanted to ogle at the costumes in this film, because oh my goodness, as far as film costumes go, these are some of the most stunning that you're going to see out there. So it is set in the 1890s, so it doesn't have the full-on bustle style. We've kind of gone in for the straighter, kind of less fussy skirt line, but we have these beautiful, we have the leg of mutton sleeves, and oh boy, do they do the sleeves in this movie. Okay, now I did say they're 1890s, but obviously the character played by Jessica Chastain, Lucille, she does kind of tend to wear more slightly earlier style kind of bustle gowns with big long trains. They are just so over dramatic, and they just ooze that kind of dark gothicness, and they're just perfect for that house that they live in, and it's just that dark Victoriana that's just yeah, as much as I don't like horror, that dark gothic aesthetic is, I do like that. I just don't like the horror and the gore bits. I just have, I just want the house and the dresses, please. So she wears a lot of those dark dramatic dresses, which contrasts with the sort of the brighter, sunnier kind of styles that Mia Wasikowska, I think that's how you pronounce her name, Mia Wasikowska wears as Edith. She wears a lot of sort of golden yellows and these beautiful blouses with all the lace details on them. And it's just another slightly different Victoriana look that lends itself very well into the steampunk aesthetic. You've also, of course, got the very kind of gothic Victorian gentleman look of Tom Hiddleston in his frock coats and waistcoats, and when he's wearing the dark glasses as well. I mean, and then I know goggles is a thing in steampunk, and I haven't really talked about goggles very much because for me personally, I very rarely wear goggles as part of my outfits, and in fact I only own one pair of goggles, and they're a decorative pair of goggles that I sometimes wear with one of my ball gowns. But in general, I don't talk about sort of goggles now, and I know these aren't goggles, but it's that these dark glasses with a Victorian as a Victorian gentleman's outfit. There's something about it that just seems to work very well. I think it's a nod back to a film which I haven't actually mentioned in one of my top films, which is Dracula with Gary Oldman. Number 8, I'm going to talk about Sherlock Holmes, and in particular I'm going to focus on the more recent films with Robert Downey Jr. in them. But to be honest, I don't think you can go wrong with any kind of adaptation of Sherlock Holmes as inspiration for your steampunk wardrobe. It's not quite so fantastical as some of the films we've talked about. It is more based in reality. That's kind of why I wanted to focus on the newer films, because they do have that slightly more steampunk aesthetic to them. Obviously in this movie they kind of stepped away from the classic the deerstalker kind of get up that Sherlock normally wears, but if you want to use that in your steampunk look, then you go for it, because it's still pretty awesome. But they went for a slightly more edgy, a kind of a little bit more dishevelled gentleman kind of look for Sherlock. And then of course you have Watson. His classic get-up is, the sort of a tweed Victorian suit and a bowler hat. And again, you can't go, if you don't want to do the whole top hat look of sort of Victorian, then go for the bowler hat look. It's certainly my husband's preferred look when we are out doing steampunk stuff. He's not so much of a top hat kind of guy, though he will wear it on occasion if needs be. Of course, I also can't talk about Sherlock without talking about Irene Adler, and in particular her costumes in this movie are wonderful 1880s bustle styles, but they don't they very much have a modern twist to them. They are made in what look to be very modern colours. She wears that gorgeous hot pink bustle number, and then she wears the lovely darker blue ensemble with sort of elements of hot pink in it as well. And that actually inspired an outfit that I made for a client a couple of years ago. We very much used that jacket as a basis for her design, with the long points down the front and kind of a ruffly bit across the bustle at the back. Film number 9 is another fairly recent film, which is the Aeronauts. I think that's, if it's not last year, it's just the year before. And I have to say, if you have a thing for heights, if you're not keen on heights, do not watch this film. I'm not too bad with heights, but there's some scenes in this which are this is loosely based on a true story, but the costuming in it, if you want inspiration for a female adventurer, obviously, although not specifically airships, it's about air ballooning. I still think that's a great, aesthetic basis for steampunk looks. It's set in the 1860s actually, which is a little bit earlier than most kind of steampunk films tend to sort of focus on, kind of 1880s and later. So to have something slightly earlier in the Victorian period is nice, and you can by all means use earlier Victorian styles in, as inspiration for your looks. You've still got those beautiful big skirts. Rather than using corsets as kind of a key part of the look, corsets on the outside as a key part of the look, you can use a wonderful thing that they had in the 1860s, which is called a Swiss waist, which is a little boned sort of decorative belt which tends to match the style of the skirt, and then you wear a blouse with that as well, and with little bolero jackets or capes, and I just think that's a really lovely look. And that although this film wasn't out at the time when I made this particular outfit, because this is one of the earliest outfits that I made way back, we're talking nearly 10 years ago I made this outfit now. Then as the film progresses, Felicity Jones also wears this wonderful theatrical sort of showgirl kind of costume. It's just so much fun. So it's obviously being theatrical, it's a much shorter style, so she's flashing off these really fun little boots, and there's just some fun colourful elements on it. And then she flips again and she changes into her leather flying ensemble, which features trousers or breeches and this lovely buttoned up leather jacket, which just goes to prove my point that you don't have to focus on all the pretty fancy drapey over dramatic Victoriana. You can go for something that's quite functional, almost quite plain, but it just has those little elements to it and little design details, and when you add in the accessories as well, that kind of creates that whole overall look for your steampunk aesthetic, that you really can choose what way you want to take your steampunk outfit. And finally, film number 10 is Mary Poppins. Now I'm going to be honest, I don't know really, is Mary Poppins a steampunk film? It is kind of Edwardian fantasy. There's no gadgets in it. It's not dark or supernatural. It doesn't have those sort of gothic elements to it. But nevertheless, it is a wonderful, fun, classic film. Again, it does have a lot of singing, so if you're not a singing person, it's probably not a film for you, although I'm sure you will have seen Mary Poppins. Who hasn't seen Mary Poppins? For whatever reason, it highly influences a lot of steampunk looks, myself included. Now, I actually done a little bit of a twist on my Mary Poppins look. I was inspired by her blouse in her new film, which is obviously set more 1940s, but I gave it a bit more of an 1890s kind of twist with some big sleeves. But I just loved all that, the stripes that were going on and playing around with the different angles on the stripes. And I do have a video about making that blouse if you want to check that out. I'll put the link in somewhere here, hopefully, if I remember, or it'll be in the description down below. But yeah, so I used the blouse from the more recent Mary Poppins and kind of mixed it with a more Edwardian style skirt, much more akin to the costumes that she wears in the original film from the 60s. And then of course there is the wonderful, the Jolly Holiday scene, which it's just that golden halcyon Edwardiana sunny days, having a picnic in the park kind of imagery, which so many people, you know, just seem to love. That little bit of escapism from the humdrum of the modern world. In that scene, Mary Poppins is essentially wearing an underbust corset, sort of waspy sort of belt with her big frou-frou skirt and all the lace, and she's got the wonderful Edwardian hat. And then of course Bert, played by the incomparable Dick Van Dyke, again in that scene wearing his stripy blazer and his straw boater hat, which again is another kind of look that you can play on for steampunk. Of course, he also wears his chimney sweep ensemble, which is great inspiration for if you don't want to do high-end portraying lord and lady whatever, then that's fine. You know, you can do a kind of that lower class, a more grungy kind of worker look, wearing a baker boy cap, tying a cravat around your sort of neck a bit more sort of loosely and haphazardly. That just all adds to that colour of the steampunk world. You know, we don't all have to be these have to be the posh people, you know, although it's very nice to wear the posher style clothes, sometimes it's nice to just be a little bit more casual or steampunk light, which is obviously adding steampunk elements to your clothing sort of every day, but without being, you know, without wearing a full-on bustle skirt and corset or sort of top hat. You know, it's a little bit more subtle, it's a little bit more casual, but it works. Okay, so that concludes my list of my 10 favourite films that inspire my steampunk costuming. I know there are hundreds and hundreds of films out there that, you know, that you can take as inspiration. These are just the ones that have particularly inspired me or that I particularly enjoyed. Do let me know in the comments down below if there's any other different films that particularly inspire you and your looks. Obviously, I just can't include them all in one film on YouTube. You know, I had to restrict it to 10. So yeah, do let me know if there's any that you think I should have included, or maybe you don't agree with me on something. Do let me know as well. I'd love to know your thoughts. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up by clicking the little thumbs up button just down below. And if you want to hear more from me and my channel and follow along with my dressmaking adventures, you can subscribe to be notified when my next videos go out. You can also support me via my Ko-fi account, which is a link down below. If you'd like to just give me a couple of pounds just to help me keep producing content for this channel. You can of course also follow me on Facebook and Instagram, which will be linked down below as well. And I shall look forward to seeing you in my next video. Take care, guys. I want to say about airship pirates. Oh my god, I've forgotten her name. Oh god damn it. I'm so rubbish with names. Why am I so rubbish with names? Oh, the name's just gone. It's on the tip of my tongue. The character whose name I can't remember.